All right, so we looked at surface area in the last two sections. Now we're going to focus on volume. Just like we did with the surface area, though, we're going to start with prisms and cylinders, and then we'll move on to cones and pyramids. And the reason we group these together the way we do, other than if you look at the shape, you can see a lot of similarities, but the processes are very similar. With surface area and then with volume, the formulas are actually the same. Okay, so whether it's a prism or a cylinder, to find the volume, you take the area of the base and then multiply it by the height. Basically, what we're doing, so first of all, when we're talking volume, we've been talking surface area and area quite a bit over the last two chapters and since the beginning of the school year. And now we're focusing on volume. So one thing we've been talking a lot with volume or with surface area and area just in general is that it's always units squared, because what that means, so if this, for example, sorry, hold on, not trying to go backwards, where's my pin? Try that again. Okay, so this, let's say that right there is 1 unit. Okay, so whatever the unit is that we're talking about and measuring. If we don't know, we just say 1 unit. If it's feet, if it's meters, if it's inches, whatever the case may be, we label the unit. Okay, and that's what we use when we're referring to lengths. So if we're trying to measure how long the side is, think a tape measure. Okay, but then when we were talking about area, we said that we use square units, because with area what we're doing is we're saying I have a 1 unit by 1 unit square, and I want to know how many of these squares can fill that shape. Okay, so that's what a 1 unit by, or that's what a square unit is. Okay, we talked about that when we were talking about why we use units for area way back at the beginning. All right, now we're moving on to volume. And volume isn't going to be units. It's not going to be units squared. Volume is 3-dimensional, so it's going to be units cubed. So what that means, and unfortunately I won't be able to draw that quite as well on here. What that means is instead of trying to fit these little, see how many of these little squares fit in there, I'm basically having little cubes. Hence units cubed. Little building blocks. Think Legos, think any sort of building blocks from your youth. Volume is just saying how many of those cubes does it take to create the shape. Okay. So with length, we use units. With area, which includes surface area, because that's still a type of area, we use units squared. With volume, it's going to be units cubed. Okay, because we're trying to figure out how many cubes we can fit in there. So in the case of a prism or a cylinder, what we have to do is we have to find the area of the base, which is basically going to tell us how many blocks it takes to make the bottom, whatever it is. So if it's a cylinder, it's how many blocks it would take to make the bottom. And then to continue on with the cylinder, we're just doing layers and layers of that base. Just putting down your first layer, making your circle. And if you find the area of the base, that's going to tell you how many blocks it would take to make that base. And then however tall it is, you just stack that many bases on top of each other. So that's why it's the area of the base times the height. All right. So it's all about starting out by finding the size of the base. Or the shape of the base, sorry. First thing we need to do is figure out what shape of the base is. Okay, looking at the picture, hopefully you can see that my base, I've got these sides that are all rectangles, the back, this left side, this right side, this front side, those are all my rectangles. The base is on the top and the bottom, and in this case the base is this trapezoid. So to find the area of the base, I have to find the area of that trapezoid. Okay, and if you read the question, it says the solid is a right trapezoidal prism. So by the name, we can tell that it's a prism whose base is a trapezoid. Okay, but even without the name, we could figure it out because we can see in the picture that that base is a trapezoid. All right, so to find the area of the trapezoid, if it helps, you can redraw the trapezoid. Okay, so here's that trapezoid that's on the top and on the bottom. The height of the trapezoid is 3. Again, pay attention to what types of heights you're talking about, right? The 3 is the height of the trapezoid. It's not the height of the prism, it's just the height of the trapezoid. And that's 6. So it's half of, how we find the area of a trapezoid, it's half of the height of the trapezoid times the 2 bases of the trapezoid, the 14 and the 6, added together. Okay, so that part's just using what we did last chapter. So 14 plus 6 is 20. So you've got half of 3 times 20, 3 times 20. And you can do this in any order, just as long as we multiply. But when we multiply 3 things together, we just do 2 at a time. We're not adding these things, so I don't distribute the 1/2. I just pick 2 numbers, multiply them together, and then multiply the third one. So I'm going to do the 3 and the 20, which gives me 60. And then half of 60 equals 30. So the area of my base is 30. So that means if I were trying to build this with blocks, I would need 30 blocks for just the bottom layer. Okay, so I need 30 blocks for just the bottom layer. But then I'm going to need to stack some more layers on top to get to be 5 centimeters tall, to get that prism to be 5 centimeters tall. So I take the area of the base and I multiply it by the height of the prism. And again, the height of the trapezoid on the base of the prism is 3. But the height of the actual prism, which goes from the one base to the other, is 5. So I'm going to take the area of the base, which we already said was 30, and multiply it by the height of the base, which is 5, and we will get 150, and it's centimeters cubed. I just want to emphasize this again. I mentioned this in the previous videos with surface area, but I just want to emphasize this again. Whether it's units cubed or units squared, depending on area versus volume, you have to have your units on there. Do not put the squared and do not put the cube on the number. It has to be on your units. And if you're not told a unit, you have to write the word unit and then squared or cubed. In this case, we're told the unit is centimeters, so it's centimeters cubed. All right, now we're talking about a cylinder. All right, exact same process. Start with the base. The base of my cylinder is a circle. So how do we find the area of a circle? It's pi times the radius squared, which is equal to 81 pi. Okay, now you can actually take 81 times pi and put it as a decimal. That's up to you. Or you can just leave it as 81 pi. So that's the area of your base. So your volume is going to be equal to the area of the base, 81 pi, times the height of the prism or cylinder, in this case cylinder, which is 6. So then we just have to take 81 times 6. And we get 486 pi. And we've mentioned you can leave your answer in terms of pi, but we have to remember our units. Again, you cannot just put your cube on the number. And yes, the pi is part of the number. Okay, in this case we have our units, so we put feet. Even if we don't have feet, if they didn't give us this feet and it was just the 9 and the 6, we would just write units cubed. Do not forget the unit part. Okay, you cannot put your exponent on the actual number. And yes, the pi is part of the number because pi is a number. Okay, so there's the answer. Otherwise, if you multiplied it all out, that's fine. You would get so you can write your answer either this way, or if you actually just typed it all into your calculator, including the pi, you would get 1,526.81 feet cubed. Okay, so either this answer or this answer, both are correct.